Okay, good morning. We are with Warren Beech, CEO of Beech Veltman. Warren, you've been here on the first day of Indaba. How did you find it? Was it similar to previous years? Did you find it a bit busier? And then from there, maybe just tell us about your outlook for 2024 in the mining industry.
Morning, Leon. Thanks very much. So what struck me yesterday morning when I walked in was the change in the dynamics in the venue itself. There are a whole lot of new role players here. A lot of service providers, and that's typically not been the case historically. There have been service providers, but predominantly it was government departments and investors around government departments. But yesterday it struck me that there were quite a few service providers. It could be potentially regarded as negative. In other words, it's changing the essence of Mining Indaba, where you're meant to be focused on investments. But my view is slightly different. I think it demonstrates commitment by service providers. I think it demonstrates their commitment to longer term contribution to the mining industry. You're not going to be here and you're not going to put your technology up if you're not committed to the industry in the long term. So I think although people might regard that as negative, I think it's a positive demonstration of commitment to the longer term industry, and I think it's good for everybody to be here. Traditionally, Mining Indaba has been a place to talk. It's been a place where everybody is present at the same time, and if you put the effort in, you're going to meet a lot of people. So I think it's positive. There was certainly a large number of people for first day going through the venue. Again, a good thing. As usual, there are a lot of side events and side meetings going on, and again, it's good. Not everybody can be in the room, but as long as you're in the area, it's a positive contribution to the discussion going forward. Biggest issue, is it another talk shop? Is it another everybody here and having a chat and then you walk away in a week's time and nothing else happens? It's up to us. It's up to every single one of us here to make sure it doesn't stop this week, and that once the wine has been drunk and the food has been eaten and the discussions have been held, that it translates into something meaningfully in the next couple of weeks and potentially months. So I think that is quite important.
There was a lot of talk and a lot of optimism about countries like Zambia and the DRC, and some remarks by the president of Zambia, which is positive. And there was also the announcement of the big cobalt metals discovering a huge deposit in Zambia. What is your opinion about these countries? At the same time, there's noises about, or there has been rumors about Zambia maybe looking at more beneficiation locally, and then exports of critical minerals, and the same in other countries, which has happened in Zimbabwe and Namibia. What is your opinion about resource nationalism or the ban on exports of these critical minerals?
I think one of the biggest complaints within all countries across Africa and across the world is that citizens of those countries don't always benefit from the extraction of minerals. And historically, the minerals were extracted, the miners come, they take it overseas, and the value chain is then driven up outside of the country with minimal benefits to the citizens. So I think it's been an issue that has been raised consistently over many, many years. So it's not unusual and it's not unexpected for there to be calls for local beneficiation. It makes sense. You drive up the price internally, it increases foreign revenue, it increases jobs, and it adds immediate value. So it's not unexpected, and I foresee that over the next 2-3 years we are going to see more calls for local beneficiation, and the governments don't have any choices. They've got to consider that, and they've got to implement regulations to support that. It's also a big election year for many countries. There's 60 or 70 elections coming up this year across the world, and election years are always challenging, and people have to deliver on their promises. So I suspect we're going to see more calls for local beneficiation, which is only a small part of resource nationalism, not nationalization. And people generally understand calls for nationalization because it's easy. People understand what that means. It means government takes over the business and runs it, and theoretically there's benefit. But nationalism includes various elements, including local beneficiation. So I think from a resource nationalism point of view, it's an easy win for governments. And it's an easy one, particularly in election years, to say, let's enforce local beneficiation with all of the benefits that come with that.
Okay, and then just touching on that, because is then the export bans, whether it's like fully banning the exports or partial banning, that is also part of resource nationalism, right? And how does that fit in? There's a lot of countries who's doing it in some sort of form,
Yes.
Zimbabwe and Namibia. Do you also think that will, especially with lithium, a big critical minerals deposit? What is your view on that? Is there other countries that will continue doing that as well?
I think so. So again, it's part of the spectrum of resource nationalism. My personal views, I think there's some governments that are doing a very good job at that. So if you look, you mentioned Zambia earlier. I think the collaboration between the DRC and Zambia and what the DRC is doing from a governmental point of view and the drive for infrastructure and investment in the DRC and Zambia, the industry is going to, in my view, have a very difficult year. There are far too many challenges, far too many moving parts this year and next year for the industry to have a smooth ride. It's simply not going to. So the collaboration, whether it's in country or between countries like the DRC and Zambia, is going to be vital. So collaboration has to be the trend this year. It has to be the word that everybody is talking about, and it has to be put into effect. Export bans within that context don't necessarily help the situation for various reasons. When you are banning exports, it implies that internally you've got the capacity to beneficiate, and not all countries have that in place yet. Big promises, big checkbooks are being presented, but again you have to look at where those checkbooks are coming from and what those governments want that are prepared to open up their checkbooks, and whether that's a good thing in the long term or not. So it sounds good on paper, but I don't think that the countries have got the capacity necessarily to beneficiate those minerals that they're banning. It's a longer term process, and the collaboration with the investors, other countries, I think is vital to unlock the potential there.
Okay, and this is happening throughout the world as well. I mean, Chile has done it in some sort of way. Okay, but in your experience, Chile has actually made a few U-turns in the last year or so. But not looking at Chile, in your experience, what do governments do well to attract mining companies to their jurisdictions, and what don't they do well? And if you can maybe illustrate it with an example of someone who's really done well, maybe Zambia or Botswana.
Yes. So again, the good examples, and seemingly they're working, Zambia, DRC, Tanzania. I think are three good examples. Namibia has had its ups and downs, but still doing very, very well. What have they all got in common? Well, the first thing is a president that is committed, and a president that is very clear about what the country wants and how they're going to go about it. So consistency, very clear messaging, absolutely clear messaging to the rest of the world on how things are going to be done in the country. The moment you have instability, or you have concerns about nationalization or contracts being cancelled, as we've seen this year, and it just after that investment, and there's a risk of it just being cancelled or agreements terminated, that is of concern. So countries that are very clear in their messaging, very consistent in the way that they apply that messaging, together with departments that are again consistent and very clear and can process applications and then apply them consistently, are doing well. Countries that don't do that are always high risk areas. Of course, many investors are still very keen on investing in countries because the minerals are there, even with a higher risk profile, but they're a lot slower. The investors are going in there a lot slower than those that are very clear messaging, consistent application, and just making it easier to do business with that consistency.
Okay, last question, and a big one. I know you're a very proudly South African mining expert. So what is your views on South Africa, not only in 2024, which is a big election year, but going forward after that? We all know there's a lot of mining potential in South Africa.
Yes.
What is wrong or what is right?
So again, South Africa, we're fortunate. We're being presented with another opportunity, and I think we've missed out on a lot of cycles, the booms we've lost out in the past. I think we're being presented with two very good opportunities again. One, there's no doubt that the typical minerals that are important at the moment, the battery minerals, but also the hydrogen minerals. I don't know if you've seen, but it's quite important. It's very important signals. So over the last couple of months, the auto manufacturers are being very clear that they are moving away from electric vehicles. So you look at Volkswagen, and that's the group, so that's Porsche, that's Audi, that's Volkswagen, and BMW announcing last week that they're also focusing on hydrogen vehicles as opposed to electric vehicles. So where does that leave the countries with the lithium, etc., and all the battery minerals versus the countries with the PGMs and the platinum and the iridium that you need for the hydrogen vehicles? I think are going to be better placed. And of course, with South Africa having the largest deposits of PGMs, I think South Africa is at a perfect crossroads again to benefit from that. On a slightly different scale, I think the small scale and artisanal mining, again, very immediate benefits that you can get from that to the communities, but we've got to fix it up. At the moment it's syndicated, it's corrupt, it's the people that are meant to benefit are actually being exposed to the worst possible conditions. So the communities are the people underground, they in those horrific conditions, and they're being paid the least. So if we can fix that up, I think that's another opportunity, and we're in that curve at the moment where the small scale artisanal mining can add genuine value to the communities and to the country, but it needs to be regulated and regularized quite quickly. So I think we've got two very good opportunities over the next year or two. We've got the challenges, everybody knows what they are. President mentioned it again yesterday, and those challenges need to be taken care of relatively quickly. Otherwise we're going to again lose out on the cycle. 2024, in my view, very challenging for our industry here. We've got the election year, we've already starting to see the disruptions, the road closures, the communities expecting so much more in an election year than before. And we have to get through it and just exploit the opportunities that are available to us.
Yep. Okay, great. Thanks, Warren.
Absolute pleasure.
Bye.